Pilgrim Church by E.H. Broadbent. It's 1933 when that book came out. I think he was a Brethren guy, but you don't really sort of feel he's strongly Brethren. He's more just general Christian, and he's searched through hundreds of books for history. Just even the book list at the back is worth hunting down. I'm sure somebody could go to British Library and hunt down all those books and really be amazed. But the main thing about the Pilgrim Church, what is the Pilgrim Church? Well, I began writing this, but it's got snaffled. Really, our pattern began in the Old Covenant with the Israelites in the wilderness. And the pattern there, if you remember, was a Levite tribe given totally to priesthood and all matters about, carrying the ark and all the things like that. There was a pillar of fire and a pillar of cloud supernaturally in the centre, originally anyway, in the centre of an encampment of 12 tribes, 3 on each side, okay, and facing in 4 directions. Now, there was also 12 elders who dealt with the day-to-day matters. Interesting that, Moses wasn't a king, he was a prophet at the end of the day. He was a prophet giving the key direction, key words that God was bringing to them. But the day-to-day matters was farmed out already in that sustainable, responsible way that is called tribes. And notice in Babel, what was going wrong with Babel was it was to have become literal conduit, pyramid conduit, from heaven to earth of loosh, of principalities and powers, sucking our energy and them controlling us. So there's no way we would ever have been able to come to the Lord or come to truth, which is what is stated. So God broke us up into more manageable sovereignties, to which this is so to this day. But it is interesting, is it not, that in Acts, the first day of the church started breaking this down, albeit they were all Jews, but there were Jews from different nations speaking different languages, and immediately God gives this gift of tongues that, in this case, many of them understood these supernatural utterances by people that didn't know the languages. So God was making a statement right there about what he thought of really even the walls of sovereignty were going to be breaking down, but not in a new age Luciferian kind of way. But as people rise into the truth internally themselves, into receiving the life of Jesus Christ and receiving the powers of the age to come. That's the new covenant. And so the pattern now has extended from Moses. So we've still got the sense of the presence of the Lord. When we gather together in his name, there he is in our midst. We are to be born again, receive new life from above, but also to have that life released. The new birth gets us into the heavenly outer courts, which is a sort of heavenly version of all the 1700 years of Jewish history before the new covenant was broken open to us through even them killing Jesus. The point wasn't that they are awful people. The point was, this is what flesh, Genesis 3, living does to this day. To this day, churches persecute the new wave of God, the new move of God. Anybody that lives after the flesh does not realize what they're doing with the new move of God that comes generation by generation. The new wineskin of God always gets persecuted by the former wineskins. So no big statement is being made about Jews. It's now carried on by Christians who do not grow, who do not seek God hard, first love, first commandment, and so gradually their hearts harden, don't they? Gradually their hearts harden, and unless older people carry on pressing hard after God, their hearts harden and they gradually fritter away. They're not part of the live Pilgrim church anymore. It's very interesting that in the E.H. Broadbent book, to return to that, he particularly encapsulates the moves that became communities. And because they became communities, just like Acts was city on a hill, what Jesus prophesied out, you are a light on a hill. You are a city on a hill. That's what he prophesied out, and that's what he got 42 months later. City on a hill, the first ever church. Now, when moves of God started to become communities, that threatens Satan's hold on the earth, and he goes mad. And that's why he used the Catholic Church to, quite often, genocide as many as they could catch, as many as hadn't fled. Henry V cut his teeth on being instructed by the Vatican to genocide Lollards. Who are Lollards? I think they were called that because they spoke in tongues, because they were born again, baptized in the Spirit, and spoke in tongues. I think that's why they were called Lollards. Others were called ranters because they simply preached the truth that everyone finds unbearable about heaven and hell, and needing the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. A lot of people now are saying, well, hell is only Gehenna or whatever. However you talk about it, Gehenna was still a rubbish dump where they burnt stuff. So however you say it, something has to happen with our infected spirit. We have to lose it at the cross, because it is hell-bound. It's sort of sucking us all towards destruction. So something had to be done about it, and it was not done properly, because it couldn't yet be done, through Judaism. So it was inhibited or kept in check by following the commandments, following the instructions, but this was all temporary until such time, as it says in Hebrews, in these last days, God has spoken to us by his Son. And the Muslims are quite wrong, and Mormons are quite wrong when they're saying, oh, there's an updated word. No. God the Father determined when to send his Son, effectively the centre of history, really. And at the right time Jesus came and lifted everything so far, because the people could now be prepared by seeing that the law didn't work. You needed some time with the law, and you still do as Christians, to realise you can't do it. It's put there to expose the Genesis 3 infestation and lie, so that Satan is masquerading as us. As long as we believe and act in the Genesis 3 platform, then the enemy is allowed to masquerade as us. So that's the point. We talk of it as sin, but it's far more subtle, because even when we're trying good works, that's still on this Genesis 3 foul, do-gooding platform that's coming from the wrong place. So that's why we have the gospel. The gospel is the cross to tree of good and tree of bad. It's the whole condition of separation. It's the whole cross to that. Which brings us to the matter of City on a Hill. So how does City on a Hill work? City on a Hill can only work when there's a core of people that have gone through the Romans procedure, the Ephesians procedure. Romans takes us particularly through to Romans 8, which is that we're quite stable and grounded in moving in the Spirit, supernaturally and naturally. Ephesians 6 is a grounding that gets us through to tremendous authority in the Spirit, because we've lived through family, we've lived through work life, we've lived through local church life. We've learned faith. Now, in Psalm 84, it's broken down in a slightly different way again, and it's blessed are the men whose strength is in thee. So that already is an exchange of his life for ours. Ours for his. It's having in our hearts the highways to Zion. This is a God work, so that we're not pointing people to ourselves, to our pyramid where we're the top king. We've got holes cut out in our heart that people are literally experiencing highways to God and heaven when they have anything to do with us. And then it's going into the places of weeping and turning those around into early rains. And then after that, we do get recognized in Zion. Blessed are the men whose strength is in thee, and it ends up in that whole passage, these men are revealed before God in Zion. And that's the nature of what 1 John 2 is, Father level, those who know him who is from the beginning. And may God lift up a whole breed, Brother Andrews and these strong servants of God that function anywhere. But if we are having our hearts expanded, surely we must be able to now dwell together like the apostles. Like we now find each other through the cross, through the other side of the cross. And then we form these core people who act and function in a locality. That's the definition of ecclesia, that's the definition of Pilgrim Church, because we're following hard after the cloud, after the presence of God. We're talking about this morning, Jonathan Brenneman was posting about the need for waiting on God. The reason we do that is to reset, get ourselves defined in the present current Rhema word again, what God is now saying. We live according to that now word, and we form now churches. There's no need for these wineskins to get old. Really, Derek Prince proved you can live 60 years of ministry and be on the cutting edge at the time you die. There's no reason at all why we have to become these very hard, crusty old wineskins. The charismatic move is getting crusty. They didn't listen to the third level word when it came in the 80s through Norman Grubb, Mother Masria Schlink, by who else was there? Whole Samfire's crowd. All the light, the basic kernel, the DNA of the third level light came 1951 through G.H. Warnock, Feast of Tabernacles, came through these individuals. And Norman Grubb wrote Yes, I Am, which is another key foundation stone, articulation. But all these things were being brought into the charismatic movement 45 years ago. And we've just been kicking around in the wilderness, in our praise mountain walk every Sunday, but without engaging and moving out of Book of Ezra and the temple into Book of Nehemiah, whole of life. This has actually happened in our lifetime. This has been peddling. We've been peddling around, and what we're looking for now are a cause of leaders that know about Romans 3 right through chapter 8, including chapters 6 and 7. It's stamped on their heart. They can take other people through into that same process, and they can actually stand each other. Because at the moment, Matthews don't like John's, Mark's don't like Luke's, Luke's don't like Mark's, and we've got whole church communities founded on these these solo quartiles, whereas we've got loose bunches together, but really they're being held together artificially by everyone slope-shouldering up to one particular Egyptian pyramid pharaoh called a pastor. This is cheating. It's got nothing to do with the Holy Spirit holding everything together, and it keeps people in artificial pyramids that cannot handle the full breadth of everything written in the New Testament letters. Every single New Testament letter, it has enormous breadth. I was saying today, even James, as Sylvia Pierce did a podcast on James to show that it's a very spiritual book, and it is not just a Salvation Army guidebook. There are phrases in there that are deeply third level. So that's why Pilgrim Church is really interesting, because it shows in history people that were emerging as communities, and then Satan panics because he knows if any communities start getting it together, then they have the power to hold an open heaven like Jerusalem over a city, like Jerusalem Church did. It was a permanent revival. They lived permanent revival. You can do that with, it seems, with just 12 third-level elders. You can hold the open heaven over a whole place. You can probably do it as one, and Kathy Walters has got books about the Celtic Christians, but usually they burn out. And God didn't try and make it so difficult for people. He just through Paul started writing about 1 Corinthians 12, 14 to 26, and saying you've got to crash through this ability to read one another in different frequencies. This is what the 4 woods of tabernacles in the Spirit looks like. Is everybody catching that? You should be starting to get excited with what God is going to bring forth through. I mean, there's just 14 different ministry types in Paul's writings. And I reckon if he had lived longer, he'd have just made more lists. Because all those lists are different. They've got overlapping things like apostles and prophets and things like that. But there's only actually pastors written in one list. How about that? You could say, well, maybe there were teachers in other lists. But what is apparent is call no man father, call no man teacher. We've got an array of ministries, of spiritual ministries, deliverance ministries, healing ministries, mercy and helps ministries. What on earth do we think we're doing in every locality? It's ridiculous. And don't say, oh, well, I've got a nice range of elders. Yeah, but they're all compliant. So right there, you haven't got the right dynamic, have you? You haven't got an open heaven dynamic. It's the big you holding everything together. We can go into places and sniff the fragrance of resurrection. And one of the main things we sniff is who's in control here? Jesus or one ministry? Trying desperately to hold all crown of 12 stars when he's only got about 3 himself together. It's ridiculous. Anyway, we're moving on, and we're going to see real ecclesia emerge in every place. Just as in my lifetime we saw second level church emerge in every single locality, whereas when I got converted, there were the odd Pentecostal church if you travel far enough, but mostly it was first level and 0 level churches where nobody's born again. Well, praise God for alpha courses at least. But alpha courses need redefining according to proper third level leaders everywhere.